Oregon at Penn State, whiteout, primetime, Big Ten opener. This one has been circled on the calendar for how long? I have been stoked to watch this football game. We knew both of these teams would come into this undefeated. There's no surprise there. And this thing just has all the makings of an instant classic. So let's talk about it. Let's preview it. Let's break it down. We will predict it at the end of this video. And let's just dive right into it, friends. Unfortunately, this game is on at the same exact time as Alabama, Georgia. Now, we're very blessed and fortunate to have two huge games going on this Saturday. It is a shame that they're at the same time. But look, beggars can't be choosers, man. Two screens. We're gonna have one eye on one, another eye on the other. Let's get started. Let's put our eyes on Penn State. Let's start with James Franklin and the elephant in the room here. All right. We know the stigma. We understand that James Franklin and really the biggest gripe against his tenure at Penn State is exactly games like this. It's moments like this when Penn State has an opportunity to play a top 10 team, to really prove themselves and establish themselves. This is typically where they stumble. But the beauty of the way this thing sets up is you're coming off a bye week. You've played 3 games where you've pretty much been a 50-point favorite. Just very, very spring training, preseason-esque tune-up games, 3 of them at that. Then a bye week to prepare for a whiteout atmosphere in Happy Valley. It's going to be unbelievable, unlike really any atmosphere we've seen. I think each year this whiteout happens, and considering now we get a top 10 Oregon Ducks team coming into Happy Valley, it's going to be unbelievable. Franklin has to have these guys ready to play, and quite frankly, guys, this feels like a must-win for him. So I'm curious to see what kind of intensity his team comes out with. Does he kind of factor his emotions into that? Now, of course, he's not going to go in the locker room and say, hey, I have to win this game or I'm going to get pressed from the press, right? That's not what's going to come out of his mouth, but you get it, right? There's that mental kind of sidebar that it's like, hey, there's a lot riding on this game. We have to get over this stigma. We have to beat the big dogs. And when we have an opportunity like this, we have to do it. I want to talk about the receiving core on Penn State's offense. To me, that's going to be the biggest factor. We know Katron Allen. We know Nick Singleton. We understand the run game's going to be fine. This is a team that ran the ball for 200-plus yards against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship last year and still lost that football game. Now, defense didn't play great. They were able to throw the ball effectively. That was probably one of the few games last year where it seemed like they were able to move the ball through the air. But Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson, those guys have to come alive. They have to be viable threats all night long. I need to see this pass game flourish tonight. Oregon's going to key the run. They're going to try to take away Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They are going to force you to throw the football against them. Oregon has a good secondary. They're fast. They're physical in the secondary. So what can Penn State, and especially Andy Kotelnicki, right, offensive coordinator there for Penn State, dial up to get the pass game going? Look, Drew Allar's experienced. He's at home. He shouldn't struggle with composure. Where's the confidence? What does this passing game look like? It has to be consistent in this football game if they want to win it. Secondly, all right, and kind of along those same lines is what does Drew Allar look like? There's going to be pressure. How quickly did they get the ball out of his hands? And what does Oregon and Dan Lanning's defense try to do? Do they try to make it uncomfortable? Do they load the box and really key on taking away the run? Do they dare play man coverage and force Penn State to prove that they can throw the football effectively? Lots to look for. Penn State offensively, there has to be some diversity in their attack in this football game. Now, defensively, again, secondary. Oregon has weapons. Decoria Moore is a huge weapon for them. Dante Moore has looked really good thus far. Also against, yes, inferior opponents, but still, this Penn State secondary, I need to see a lot from them. Guys like Harris and Collins are going to be huge in that secondary. Curious to see who they match up with. What they kind of come to the table with in terms of eliminating some of those big plays, force Oregon to sustain drives. The Ducks have been just really firework type plays this year, and that's what we've known Oregon for. Offensively, they've always been a juggernaut. They've always been high scoring, a lot of points, but a lot of big plays. So on the road, loud environment, if Penn State can get the Ducks behind the chains, right, kind of slow down their momentum on some of these drives, take away those chunk plays, can Oregon sustain consistent 13, 14, 15 play drives and then put the ball in the end zone for 6 points? That's going to be something I'm watching for. Now, let's talk about Oregon. Dante Moore, huge road test. There's youth, of course. There's youth really all over this Oregon team. It's a young unit. I'm curious to see how they weather this environment. If anything, I think there's something about the whiteout that it's almost such a luxury to get to play in, even as the road team, to know that, hey, we're good enough to bring this atmosphere alive. We're good enough for the whiteout to be pinned on us So that's kind of like a motivating factor. And you know Dan Lanning's going to utilize that in his pregame speech and all week this week. That's been the talk is, hey, the whiteout is for you. They are ready and prepared, and everyone's coming out for you. So wear that, wear it with pride. Look, DeCorian Moore, how quick can they get him going? He is a unit. I think they're going to utilize him a lot in the screen game. Just get the ball in his hands. He is a threat. He's a weapon. He can force missed tackles. If you get the ball to him in open space, it is dangerous what he can do. Now, once you do that, if you can force that Penn State secondary to have to try to come up a little bit, not give away so much of that underneath, then how can you stretch the field deep? Do you give Dante Moore time to even throw the ball? That's going to be a big thing. Jaden Lemar in the ground game, also something to watch for. Can they consistently run the football? Oregon, their rushing offense hasn't really been a problem, but look, for both of these teams, really, it feels like this is the first true test of the season. The first really competitive, like 50-50 kind of like, hey, talent versus talent matchup right here. There's hardly a roster advantage if we were to go down the line. This is a very balanced football game. So a lot of this is going to come down to X's and O's and really just execution. Offensively, they're going to have to execute with a lot of crowd noise that you almost can't replicate at practice. So curious to see how smooth they look, if they can eliminate some false start penalties, things like that. That's going to be the big thing. Defensively, on that D-line, guys, Alexander, Green, Washington, a lot of those guys are going to have to be physical. They have to force Penn State to be able to throw the football. If they can slow down Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, what does that do to Drew Aller? Force him to sit in the pocket, make reads, and make throws against a very good secondary. That's what I want to see out of that Oregon Ducks defense. Make them throw the ball. Take away the run, force Penn State into some uncomfortable situations, 3rd and long, right, down in distance. Make them have to dial it up and beat you strategically, not just through the ground, right? 4 or 5, 6 yards of carry. That's the hole they cannot dig themselves in. That's it for the preview. Let's get to the prediction. Penn State is favored -3.5. The Nittany Lions in a whiteout is an extremely hard team to beat, but I like Dan Lanning and I like this Oregon team. They've kind of ran under the radar a lot this year. And to be fair, so has Penn State. Preseason, Penn State was really one of the more talked about teams, but the way their schedule shaked up, we kind of circled this one and set them to the side, just considering their first 3 games were really against nobody. They were off last week. Oregon, on the other hand, when I looked and saw Oklahoma State on there, and then I saw Oregon State, I said, hey, maybe that'll be a little bit of a measuring stick. Unfortunately, Oregon State's 0 this year and hasn't won a game. Oklahoma State looks terrible. They're a shell of themselves, and Gundy's not even there. So even more difficult to try to measure this up, but I say all that to tell you, look, I'm taking Oregon. I'm just going to cut to it. I'm taking the Ducks. I think that the stigma around James Franklin is just so big, and it's just there. And pause on that. But I like this Ducks team. Like, I like the energy they play with. I know Dan Lanning's going to have these guys ready, and I just think Dante Moore's going to come out and shock the world. I really do. I think Oregon wins this football game. I think they force a couple turnovers. They make Drew Aller uncomfortable. Penn State still struggles to really establish a passing game in this football game. I do think this thing's going to be high scoring. I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks. I feel like we've seen a lot of games this year, competitive games at least, that have been a little more low scoring. Now, Georgia, Tennessee was quite a bit of fireworks. It slowed down a tad bit there in the second half, but all that said, I'm taking the Ducks. I think they win this game on the road in a whiteout. They put the country on notice, and who knows what the conversations then become if that happens. So that's just my thoughts. Not an expert, not a Vegas insider. I'm really liking this situation and the way this sets up for Oregon. Let me know who you guys think takes this one. I appreciate you as always for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.